In the 1950s, Americans were practically living off soda, drinking between 150 to 200 cans of fizzy liquid every year. By 2000, that number had exploded to 53 gallons of soda annually. But today, things have changed. People are drinking about 30% less, averaging around 38 gallons a year. And here's where it starts getting interesting. A big reason for this shift is a little drink brand called LaCroix. Back in 2015, LaCroix started showing up in stores everywhere, and the whole beverage scene flipped. By 2024, LaCroix had not only made a name for itself, but had been ranked one of the most trusted brands in America for the second year running. Which brings us to the big question: how in the world did LaCroix, a once unknown brand, take down the biggest soda giants and become such a powerhouse in such a short time? Well, in this video, we're going to dive into that story. But before we can understand LaCroix's rise, we need to take a quick look at what the beverage market looked like before these colorful cans started flying off the shelves. You see, in the liquid beverage market, Coca-Cola first hit the scene in 1886, with Pepsi following a bit later in 1898. And once they got their foot in the door, these two brands quickly became household names. Their insanely addictive taste got people hooked. However, more than the taste, their aggressive marketing is what really put them in the spotlight. By the 1940s, Coke cemented itself as a staple in American homes, and from there, soda consumption just kept climbing. In the 50s and 60s, it saw soda become even more popular, and with that came bigger servings. The original Coca-Cola bottle was 6.5 ounces, but by the 60s, 12-ounce cans and larger bottles became the norm. As soda became more accessible, people drank more and more. Between 1977 and 1997, soft drink consumption among adults jumped by over 60%. And for kids, that number more than doubled. However, as people were downing more soda, something else happened in the background, and that something was obesity. While thousands of Americans were filling their bellies with soda, the obesity rates in the U.S. were climbing at almost the same pace, roughly doubling in the same time frame. By the late 1990s, Americans were guzzling about 46 gallons of soda a year. Unsurprisingly, this surge in soda consumption went hand in hand with a rise in obesity. In the 1950s and 60s, about 13% of U.S. adults were obese. This period marked the beginning of shifts in how people ate and lived, as processed foods and sugary drinks like soda became the norm. By the early 70s, the obesity rate had inched up to around 15%. This was also when larger portion sizes became popular, making it easy to rack up those calories. Fast forward to the late 80s, and that number shot up to 23%. More people were living sedentary lives, sitting behind desks instead of being active, which only made things worse. By the time we hit the late 90s, the obesity rate had ballooned to 30%. Soda became a regular part of many people's diets, and with each sugary sip, the nation's waistline expanded right along with it. As obesity rates climbed, so did the costs of healthcare. By the early 2000s, the U.S. was shelling out a staggering $190 billion a year to manage obesity-related health conditions. This included everything from heart disease to diabetes. And the more people drank sugary sodas and ate processed foods, the higher those numbers climbed. It wasn't just a health crisis, it was becoming a financial one, with the cost of treating obesity putting a massive strain on the healthcare system. In the midst of all this chaos, there was one group that seemed to be thriving: the soda manufacturers. While obesity rates soared and healthcare costs ballooned, soda companies were cashing in big time. They made billions as their products became staples in the American diet. And even when health researchers started pointing fingers at sugary drinks as a major culprit behind the obesity epidemic, the soda giants didn't back down. Instead, they doubled down, going as far as to sponsor counter-research to shift the blame elsewhere on anything and anyone but themselves. They worked hard to protect their profits. These guys even went as far as funding studies that pinned obesity on other factors while conveniently sidestepping their own role in the crisis. Luckily, the soda industry's charade started to crumble in the mid-2000s when Americans began waking up to realize how bad soda really was. For the first time ever, bottled water was outselling soda. People started ditching the sugary drinks in favor of healthier options, worried about their sugar intake and wanting more natural beverages. And there were a few big reasons for this shift. First, the 2008 financial crisis hit hard, and people were tightening their belts. Spending on things like soda became unnecessary as everyone became more price-conscious and health-focused. Then in the 2010s, things got even tougher for soda companies. Several cities across the U.S. slapped taxes on sugary drinks, which made soda less appealing. In places like Berkeley, California, soda consumption dropped by a whopping 21% after they introduced a soda tax in 2014. At the same time, there was a growing backlash against diet sodas. Concern over the use of artificial sweeteners like aspartame led consumers to question the health implications of diet sodas. That skepticism seriously hurt diet soda sales as well. As expected, all this created the perfect environment for new beverage options to rise. People still wanted something tasty and fun to drink, but without all the sugar, chemicals, or guilt. Plain water, while healthier, didn't cut it for many folks who still wanted some flavor and fizz. This opened the door for alternatives that offered a refreshing experience without compromising on health. Sparkling waters, flavored seltzers, and natural drinks started gaining attention, offering the same satisfaction as soda but without the negative side effects. And that's exactly when LaCroix entered the spotlight. Even though LaCroix began to gather public attention in 2015, the brand had actually been around for decades. In fact, LaCroix's journey began in February 1980 when G. Heilman Brewing Company, based in LaCroix, Wisconsin, introduced the sparkling water as one of the first anti-Perrier brands. Perrier, at the time, had a reputation for being a high-end and somewhat elitist, which turned some consumers off. LaCroix was created to appeal to a different crowd, marketing itself as an all-occasion beverage that was more approachable and down-to-earth. Its name, pronounced like St. Croix River, that forms most of Wisconsin's western border, was meant to evoke a familiar local touch. For the next decade, LaCroix fared well, especially in the Midwest, where it steadily built a loyal customer base. By 1992, the brand was valued at an impressive $25 million. However, Heilman, despite its success with LaCroix, fell out of its depth within the non-alcoholic beverage market and admitted to lacking experience outside the beer industry. That same year, the company decided to sell LaCroix to National Beverage. This change in ownership marked the next chapter for the brand, one that would eventually set the stage for its massive resurgence decades later. By 2002, National Beverage decided it was time to give LaCroix a facelift, hoping to make the brand stand out more. Funny enough, the design they ended up choosing was actually the one management liked the least. But it was a big hit with consumers. Instead of going for the sleek, simple look that most water brands were using, they took a chance on something bold and colorful, and it paid off big time. The bright, splashy design with its funky font wasn't just eye-catching. It gave LaCroix a fun, approachable vibe that really clicked with people. This playful new look helped the brand break away from the pack and catch the attention of consumers who wanted something more exciting than average bottled water. That excitement skyrocketed when Americans started losing interest in sugary drinks and turned their attention to sparkling water. National Beverage was more than ready to step up to the plate. With its 12 bottling plants across the country, they ramped up production and shipped LaCroix to more stores nationwide than ever before, even landing on the shelves of Whole Foods. But what really set them apart was their secret weapon: flavor. Before LaCroix, National Beverage's claim to fame was Shasta sodas, which was known for being cheaper than Coca-Cola and offering a dizzying variety of flavors. 36 at the time. They kept Shasta in demand by constantly rotating new flavors, many of which were created in-house while retiring old ones. So when they saw seltzer sales were creeping up, they decided to use the same strategy to make sparkling water more appealing. The idea was simple: turn this sophisticated but tasteless European drink into something Americans would actually enjoy. Just like they hoped, the company's gamble paid off. Dieters looking to kick soda and alcohol were some of the first to latch onto LaCroix, excited to find a flavored drink that wasn't loaded with sugar or artificial ingredients. The best part was that the products spoke for themselves. In fact, Louise Hendon, who blogged about the drink in 2012 on her paleo diet site, said she was thrilled to find something healthy and accessible at stores like Walmart and Target. By 2015, LaCroix had even made its way onto the approved list for the Whole30 diet, a restrictive eating plan, like paleo, which requires participants to cut out sugar and alcohol. Now that LaCroix had perfected its product, the next step was to get people hooked. Unlike Coke and Pepsi, who dominated the airwaves with expensive TV ads, LaCroix took a more subtle approach. They knew where their audience was spending their time: social media. Platforms like Instagram, where over half of 18 to 29-year-olds are active, became the perfect playground for the brand. But LaCroix didn't have a passive presence online. They built an entire community by staying highly interactive, responding to comments, and engaging directly with their fans. This personal touch made people feel connected to the brand in a way that other beverages weren't offering. One of LaCroix's smartest moves was mastering the hashtag game. They encouraged their followers to use branded hashtags like LaCroix Love and Live LaCroix, promising a chance to be featured on their profile. But it didn't stop there. They also hopped on trending hashtags to align with what was hot at the moment. For instance, they started reposting user photos with the hashtag Whole30approved. In a way, this connected with the Whole30 movement, a popular diet program focused on cutting out processed food, sugar, dairy, and grains. And guess what? LaCroix fit perfectly into the program, becoming one of the few beverages people would enjoy without having to worry about their health or even feel guilty. These strategies didn't just attract new users to their social media circle, they positioned LaCroix as a brand that truly gets its audience. However, LaCroix's real genius lay in its approach to influencers. Instead of shelling out big money for major social media stars, LaCroix focused on micro-influencers and everyday users who were already fans of the product. They didn't need massive followings. LaCroix would often repost content from people with as few as 150 followers. With the product dialed in and a social media strategy that resonated with its target audience, LaCroix didn't need flashy ads. It had become a cultural phenomenon organically and without any hassle. Another reason LaCroix stood out is because it never backed down from the big players, PepsiCo and Coca-Cola, who both made their moves to compete, but LaCroix wasn't intimidated. For instance, Pepsi replaced its Aquafina sparkling water with a more upbeat bubbly, and Coca-Cola ditched Dasani sparkling in flavor of its punchier Aha brand in 2020. Despite all that, LaCroix stayed steady and confident, even boasting a bubbly ticker symbol, Fizz. Under the leadership of CEO Nick Caparella, National Beverage, LaCroix's parent company, thrived. Since going public in '91, the company's stock has shot up more than 4,600%, completely blowing the S&P 500's growth out of the water. While Coke and Pepsi threw huge amounts of cash into marketing their new sparkling water brands, LaCroix kept it simple by letting its quirky personality and loyal fan base do the talking. And it's paid off. By FY20, the company's profits jumped to $171 million, with a crazy 470% growth since 2006. Even though LaCroix's seen impressive success, it wasn't without its share of challenges. By 2019, the brand faced a significant downturn, with sales of flavored sparkling water plummeting. Analysts note that LaCroix's sales had fallen more than 15% in May of that year, following a downward trend from the previous months. Increased competition and a perceived lack of fresh innovation led to a rough patch for the company. National Beverage stock took a hit as well, dropping 10% that week and a staggering 62% since September 2018. Despite these setbacks, LaCroix didn't throw in the towel. The brand still managed to report a 7.5% increase in full-year sales in 2023, meeting its target and showing some resilience. Even though profitability in North America faced hurdles, LaCroix continued to adapt and push forward. Now, if that doesn't show you how the brand's ability to weather the storm and keep bouncing back, I don't know what will.